Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Welcome to the show. We're recording another late night special.
Late night TypeScript FM special.
Late night special.
So take out your wine and pour a glass.
A glass of your favorite tincture.
That's right. Where were you this weekend?
I went up to Duluth for my anniversary.
Awesome.
And it was our copper anniversary, which I think is number 7.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of fun. I ate the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
We brought the little Maverino with us and Grandma with us. And that is the maximum distance we can travel with her, I think. It's about a 3-hour drive from here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you have to stop and feed?
We did during nap time. So
Okay.
we did lunch and then we drove and she slept for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But that last hour was a bit of a challenge when she was awake.
Yeah.
But that's about the maximum. So we know our range.
Yep.
I don't think we could go any further with her.
Yep. You can vacation to Duluth. That's what us Twin Cities people do.
Yeah. It's a great place. I mean,
it is
if you're looking for a weekend away.
We're going up there in a few weeks. We're doing some camping.
Nice. Yeah. Ate my way through Duluth. There's great chocolate shops in the area. So I ate a bunch of chocolate. And
there's a lot of good restaurants and breweries up there too.
Yeah. If you're at all a foodie, there's no shortage of great food on the North Shore.
Yep. Sounds good. What else did you do last week?
Well, I got an expensive quote for my front steps that are falling apart. I think you've seen my front steps.
I've stepped on them.
Terribly unsafe. If you've watched Muppet Treasure Island, terribly unsafe. So we have a lot of elderly folk that go in and out of our house, and it's starting to get to a point where if you fell, the railing would not help you. You would just fall through that railing and it would collapse.
Yeah.
So we're getting some new steps put in that are going to be maintenance-free, kind of timber tech.
Cool.
Stuff. And, ooh boy, I would not have called the price.
Let me guess. I'm just thinking, so you're replacing concrete steps?
Well, there's concrete footings.
Okay.
But they're small right now. So they're gonna tear them out.
Okay. And are they wood steps? I don't remember.
Right now they're wooden.
Okay. So you've got wood steps on small concrete little paver foundation thingies.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got to demo that, and then they're going to put some composite decking, basically. Mm-hmm. So that when you do that, you're basically building a small deck.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it right, they also should probably be attaching it to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And if your current one is not attached to the house, you have to basically tear out the siding and find the rim joist or whatever and fasten it properly. Okay.
You know too much about this.
So I'm guessing I've watched some videos on how to do steps or how to build a deck. I'm going to guess labor, materials. I'm going to guess 15,000.
That is pretty close. We're a little south of that, but not by much.
Yeah.
It's
so expensive.
Yeah. I would have, me being a layperson that's completely ignorant of these things, I would have guessed no more than 5.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
It's almost like a minimum. It's almost a minimum of 10,000 to do pretty much anything. That's to hire someone to do something. So I always guess somewhere above 10,000 if people have to spend a day or two, especially if it's a multi-day project.
Yeah. No, it's kind of a safety thing. So we're just going to be okay, well, we just got to find a way to make it happen and make it happen.
Well,
so what you been up to?
I have been doing my own construction work. So basically, dear listener, imagine you have a room floating above the ground. Well, what do you do underneath it, right? Like if you were doing a concrete slab, you got concrete underneath it. That's not a big deal. But if you have these big sticks up on the ground, then you just got dirt. And so basically what I'm doing is I decided I just don't want dirt underneath because I don't want critters to be making holes and stuff. There's a family of rabbits that lives under my neighbor's deck. I don't want that under my studio. And so basically I'm building a retaining wall, and then it sort of will look like a garden wall. So it'll look like a box around surrounding the office. And so I got all my timber, I got all the rocks for it, and I dug a hole, like a bunch of trenches, because you got to dig a rectangle. But I'm proud to say that I've got the second row of timbers all set today. So everything is stable, it's level, and as much as you can do with landscaping timber. So anyway, that's what I've been doing, and it's looking really nice.
Yeah,
I gotta say.
Yeah, and then eventually you will have a home recording office in the yard.
Yeah, and that's probably not going to be coming this year. That's probably going to be next year.
For sure.
Yeah, but we've got some news.
We got some news.
Last week's news was a pretty short episode, and this one, we've got some news.
We got a ton of news this week.
Yep. So this is news for the week of August 18th. I do want to start with TypeScript Go news because there's actually quite a bit that happened.
Yeah. So TS Go has had a lot of cool stuff hit the nightly. Big updates coming on nightly, two of which were pointed out by Jake Bailey. One of them is they've redone the LSP infrastructure to use a snapshot model.
So, and first, do you want to define what's LSP again?
Yeah, that's a good good thing to talk about. So LSP stands for Language Server Protocol, which is something that VS Code and Microsoft invented, which has kind of become the de facto way of writing language plugins for editors. So basically everything uses Language Server Protocol. Even NeoVim does for communicating with like tooling for a specific language. So that's what an LSP is. They went and rewrote the language server infrastructure into a snapshot model. And the idea here is that they don't have any like shared state, no data races. So it allows them to be very concurrent and very fast. And that's pretty cool.
Okay.
The other thing that they added is a build mode, -B, and it's even concurrent build mode. So they can do 10x plus speed improvements on DT tools, both with a hot build, like a hot cache, and cold, which is pretty awesome. And they have a really cool screenshot.
And I think they even said DT tools was even not a representative project because it doesn't have a lot of chaining dependencies. But if you ran this on an even bigger project, like a mono repo, you get even better results.
Yeah, and there's even more TypeScript Go news. Did you want to talk about some of that?
Yeah, so there's a couple PRs that merged, more performance stuff. One is more of a memory performance improvement. And I think that the build mode was implemented by Sheetal, and she's on a roll because she also improved performance for incremental builds. They got a 52% reduction in memory allocations, 90% faster build info read time, and a 23% overall build time improvement. So that's pretty huge.
Dang.
Yeah. And then the other kind of good news, if you are a fan of const enums, just as a reminder, and I had to remind myself, like, what is so special about const enums? In TypeScript, they get inlined. There's an example of like Visual Studio Code exit and shutdown signal codes. And so you've got an enum, a const enum of all these different shutdown codes. They're all just numbers, right? But you have a friendly name for them. You reference them throughout your code base, but when it gets compiled to JavaScript, what does TypeScript do? It inlines the value. So it just puts a number there. So there's no runtime overhead at all, which is awesome. So unfortunately, TypeScript Go, initially, they were saying, we're not going to do const enum inlining anymore with TypeScript Go. But guess what? It got merged in because it did break a few things in third-party APIs. So they brought it back. So we'll be able to preserve our const enums.
This is actually super cool because these are super useful. And I understand why they wanted to remove them, but it's also a really fast way of doing comparisons. So it is also really nice that they are back.
Cool. guess what? We've got more linting stuff.
What? More linting? There's so many
Yes.
linters.
Okay, so we did not talk about this linter in the State of Linting 2025 episode because I think that it was in pre-release or unstable or maybe not even really announced yet. But the creators of Rspack, which is the Rust, basically the Rust drop-in for Webpack, also has now introduced Rslint, which is a TypeScript-first linter written in Go, powered by TypeScript Go. So this is what Josh would refer to as a native speed linter, and it also is powered by TypeScript Go. So it's also using the native TypeScript. So this is pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, and their features and goals, they're touting a 20 to 40x faster performance than traditional ESLint setups, thanks to Go and TypeScript Go. They also have typed linting by default, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the gaps with some of the other linters right now. I know that Oxlint is working on that, but it's experimental. So it looks like Rslint is going in with that in mind. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's a really interesting comparison in their blog post with talking about two parallel bets on typed linting. And, you might be like, didn't OXLint just unveil its own type-aware linting preview? Why, yes, they did. And together, these two announcements show that typed linting is like, this is the new thing. This is like where things are going. This is the new way of doing things. Now, these approaches share DNA, but they diverge slightly in packaging and ecosystems. Like Rslint is Go plus TypeScript Go and picks up the TSGoLint prototype and evolves it into a TypeScript-first linter that aims to be ESLint compatible while delivering these performance games. OXLint is Rust, Oxy, plus TypeScript Go. So the linter core is written in Rust, but it calls into a vendored version of TSGoLint for type checks. And this is kind of a hybrid approach that lets OXLint, add typed rules while keeping the Rust-ishness of it. So Rslint might be kind of a misnomer, at least, looking at this, because it looks like it's actually Go. It's just all called Rslint.
Yeah, probably just because that's the Rspack, right? So, yeah, it's interesting to see where this is going to go. I mean, this is experimental, of course. So if you go check out the GitHub repo, it's totally experimental right now. So don't use it in production. But it'll be interesting to see where these tools evolved. And I think Josh is working on Flint, and so that also will have a very similar architecture. So yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, check it out. Next up on our list is we have a new Bun release that just dropped that has some kind of big stuff in it. So we bent our rule a little bit and wanted to talk about Bun 1.2.21, which includes a touted 500x faster post message, which is wild.
Yeah, so it looks like the too long didn't read is they have an engineering blog post on how they made it faster, but it's independent of string size, which means that when you send really large strings like 3 megabytes plus, it's up to 500 times faster. So it's not like it's 500 times faster for every single string, but because post message is the only way to like communicate, I think, between workers, right? So that's the only way to send data to workers. So it is likely that you are sending really large strings. And so it's going to be 500 times faster now. Also uses 22 times less peak memory. So more memory efficient and more faster. I like it.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, so you should go take a look at how they did it. So they did some stuff that the .NET team did when they migrated to .NET Core and rewrote a lot of stuff where they're doing like zero allocations, it looks like. Zero copy optimization for thread safe string sharing. So it turns out that when you don't allocate memory for string copying, things go faster and use less memory. It's hard to do though.
It is. It requires some mind bending. Definitely check out my talk about making fast JavaScript. But allocations are a sneaky way to that things slow down. And even if you're not in a garbage collected language, you might be able to be like, oh, well, that's garbage collected. Even allocations in native languages will hurt you. because you're doing like a system call to get that memory, and you're doing system calls to free it. So if you can avoid allocating in your program at all, you'll go much faster.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. They've announced a new unified client for bun.sql. They now support MySQL and MariaDB and SQLite alongside PostgreSQL with 0 dependencies.
This
That's
is great.
cool.
Yeah, you want this kind of stuff, this kind of first-party support for these databases, which SQLite and PostSQL, to take the prime pronunciation, are kind of big deals. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rails uses SQLite by default now, and Postgres is a workhorse. Like, I use it for all of my stuff. Literally, all of my stuff in prod is running Postgres.
They've also announced native YAML support, so you can import YAML files directly or use bun.yaml.parse if you want to. They've introduced the Secrets API, which is a native credential storage using the operating system keychain or credential manager. That's cool.
Yeah, this is really great because you don't want to be shooting secrets in with environment variables if you can at all help it.
Yeah, it's nice to have a secrets manager built into Bun, so I don't have to use a third-party service or something like that if I just want to store secrets.
That's right. And if you can use the operating system credential manager, that's going to be your best bet.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have one of those, your cloud platform probably does as well.
Yep. So you don't have to do so many environment variables for doing all those secrets.
And if you have to use environment variables, try not to put the secrets in the clear.
No. Okay. They've added a couple other things quickly. This is kind of neat. The API bun.strip ANSI, which is like ANSI escape removal, they've accelerated using SIMD. And apparently it's 6 to 57 times faster than the strip ANSI package, NPM package. So that's pretty cool. They use that technology you talked about in a previous episode, SIMD, which is like a math based, right?
Yeah, it's a type of instruction in your CPU. SIMD instructions are single instruction, multiple data. So the idea is that it's kind of like matrix multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
You have multiple lanes, so you have a vector. So you have multiple lanes, so you might have 4 floats that you want to multiply by something at the same time, and it can do it in one instruction, which is really fast instead of doing like going to do a multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. And then you have always been able to do bun build to like compile to an executable, but you haven't been able to do that programmatically. So now they introduced bun.build, which is a compile API. So you can programmatically create standalone executables with cross-platform targets. So that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so now you can write scripts to do stuff with bun.build. Other runtime news, Deno had a small update, it looked like.
Yeah, and in the perf improvement zone 2.4.4 added a structured clone perf improvement. And I went and took a look at this PR, and it looks like they're taking advantage of that V8 happy path that we were talking about in structured clone. This is one advantage of like building on top of V8 is you kind of get some of their stuff for free, and they go ahead and take advantage of some of that goodness from V8, and then they also added some of their own perf improvements that avoid round trip serialization, deserialization. So they've improved some of their own stack, and it looks like they've taken advantage of the V8 built-in happy path for structured clone.
Nice. Is that using like the new JSON stringify stuff we talked about?
I think so. I think that is what is going on.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. If I am wrong, you let me know. I'm currently reading Rust code, so I could be misinterpreting how this is working.
Cool. That sounds good, though.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We all like perf improvements.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know about Next.js? Have you heard of it?
I've heard of Next.js.
You don't use it, though.
I don't use it, though.
You're an Angular
I am
person.
an Angular person.
That's fine. I've used Next.js. I have a course on how to add internationalization to it. But the last one that we covered, I think, was in June or something like that. Or no, it was like in May.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a little while since the last Next.js update. But 15.5 dropped, and there's some big stuff in here.
There's some big stuff and some big TypeScript stuff. Notably, typed routes, route export validation, and route type helpers.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet stuff. I mean, I have wanted typed routing for a long time. I think that's a super nice feature that they added. So it'll do like compile time checking, I think, of your routes.
I saw on Blue Sky that to much praise, Next.lint is being deprecated, and Joke Bailey went ahead and been like, oh, maybe they could have done Preact.
Nice. Is there anything else cool in Next.js 15.5?
Yeah, there's a few things. The TurboPack builds are now in beta. So production TurboPack builds are now on. The Node.js middleware is now stable.
Nice.
So there you go. You can
That's
build
good.
your own middlewares in Node.js, and it is now stable.
Yeah. And I think Next.js middleware has been a feature that a lot of production teams want to implement. So good news for you.
Awesome. Some sneaky updates. Preact 11 just dropped their beta like literally 3 days ago. And after years of thoughtful development, Joey on Blue Sky posts they're going to have better hydration, forward refs by default, and lots of performance upgrades. So a lot to love about Preact 11.
When Preact is already fast.
It is very fast and small.
So them saying that there's even more performance improvements, that's pretty sweet.
Yep. Very cool. And last but not least, for you Angular people like me, Angular 20.2 dropped recently. And for those of us who've lived with Zone.js forever, they have a now zoneless, like a stable zoneless API. So you can do change detection without Zone.js, which is awesome. So Zone.js, if you weren't aware, was this horrible hack that basically spied on the entire universe in order for you or for the Angular application to know if something changed with a side effect. That's how it did it. So any kind of like, post message, any kind of like event handler, any kind of weird browser API, Zone.js was there watching. And now you don't need that. There's support for TypeScript 5.9 in Angular 20.2. They have built-in enter and leave animations, which is kind of nice for getting that polished look. And they have, which is something I'm using right now, they added a headless mode for VTest browser mode, which is a thing that I am actually using right now because I just upgraded our app to Angular 20.2, like literally last week. Like 100% last week I did this.
Sweet.
So it's super cool.
Nice. Well, it's nice that they are supporting the latest TypeScript. So
yeah, very cool.
Are you at your work? Are you on the latest TypeScript?
We are.
Okay.
Like now, if you ask me that, it depends on where in the product you are.
Mm-hmm.
In our vertical, we are.
Okay.
We like to stay pretty up to date, but depending on parts of the product, you might be on a different version of whatever. And I think that same story is true of any sufficiently large company.
Yep. Sometimes it takes a while to catch up. Cool. Let's move on to some community highlights. Remember in the last episode we mentioned Dr. Axel was working on a learning web development series. So in the last week, he published 3 blog posts, one on Booleans, comparisons, and if statements, another on loops, and then another on shells, like terminal shells, and Node.js. So that's pretty sweet. So this is like definitely more of like a beginner series because it's about learning web development. But we all know some folks who are new to web development, and I think this is going to be a great learning resource to send them.
Yeah, honestly, I think taking, a resource I wish I had as a person getting into programming is I wish I had a primer on shells because, you're like, a lot of like code you see out there on GitHub or what have you is kind of taking it for granted that you know how to operate the shell.
Yes.
And then the tools around like Node and NPM, they just assume that knowledge. And a lot of people don't have that. So it's nice to see like some primers here in that space.
It took me a while to get comfortable with like, how do I customize my shell profile? Like, how do I change it? I have no idea how to change my profile. Where do I put these environment variables that you're telling me that I need to set and stuff like that?
I'm late to the party because I started daily driving Linux here this last month, but Oh My Zish is so good.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah, that's what I use too. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is so awesome. I've been missing out. Anyway.
That's right. Cool. Guess what? There is a PR that Daniel from the TypeScript team submitted to turn strict on by default. Now, for a good part of the last decade, if you were doing TSC init, the TS config that it generated would have strict on by default. But this is being able to just run TSC, a build, and without a TypeScript config. And it just is assuming that strict is on. And so this is definitely kind of a breaking change. And Daniel says in the PR, in TypeScript 6.0 and 7.0, we want to go a step further than explicitly setting strict in the TSC init. We want to enable it by default everywhere. So this is kind of a big change. So not sure if it'll go through, but I think it'll be nice because I think for people that are new to TypeScript and they're like getting started, I think people just kind of assume that strict is on, but it's not. So Daniel is arguing that that's kind of like a pit of failure, like when someone is trying to use TypeScript instead of a pit of success. So that's a pretty good argument for turning strict on by default because it just enables so many different flags.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I think, especially in the context that the default init had strict on for so long. I think it just makes sense. Like, and then also, like you said, pit of success.
Yeah. We've got a library watch for you. This one hit Hacker News. It's called Valleys. It's a lightweight zero dependency library for validating arbitrary runtime data in TypeScript. So anytime you say validating and TypeScript, you're thinking, what about Zod? What about Valabot, etc.? So I'm just quoting from the repo. It says, libraries like Zod, Valabot, decoders, etc., typically return a new, often transformed value from .parse. Valleys, instead, asserts types directly. This provides several performance benefits as no time is spent copying arrays, strings, or nested objects. This makes valleys ideal for performance-critical applications where memory efficiency and speed matter. Now, one thing I do want to point out, because that sounds really good, someone in the comments said, hey, Archetype does this too. And dear listeners, we'll be diving into Archetype pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But I think, yeah, this is pretty nice.
Yeah, and this is on theme with what we were talking about with performance is avoiding allocation. Turns out that's fast.
Yep. So you can check it out if you want to. It's very it's lightweight, right? So there's not a lot of fluff to it or anything. So if you don't want to adopt a whole new thing to do runtime validation, you can check out Valleys. You saw something kind of fun.
That's right. I was watching the Blue Skies and I saw a funny little video of Hangman in pure TypeScript types. In the theme of using the TypeScript type system as a programming language itself, they went and implemented Hangman inside the TypeScript type system, and you can watch them go ahead and guess letters live, and you can see the outputted type in Shiki as the answer and how many spaces they've got. And
that's cool.
So it's very funny. And there's a little emoji as you get closer and closer to failing that eventually is a skull and crossbones when you lose. And Sandro linked to his source code there in the Blue Sky thread. Check it out. Very interesting stuff.
Nice. Before we get to a discussion, I just had a blog post I came across. It's called Exhaustive Switch Expressions in TypeScript. So we've talked about ways to do exhaustive switch statements and other tips and tricks like assert never and things like that. But in this case, this blog post is from Replo, and they have a big React application, and they do a lot of conditional rendering. And so they've got a discriminated union, and they want to render different things depending on what the value of that discriminated key is, the discriminator. But they need it to be strongly typed, and they want it to throw a compiler error if they don't catch the different conditions, because they have so many of these different types that do different, conditions. And so a switch statement is not going to cut it, by default, right? Because you don't get the correct type safe return value from it. And JSON Yu, who we featured in an earlier episode, one of his YouTube videos was on the power of IIFEs, the immediately invoked function expressions. So it creates a closure, and the return value from that closure is your type safe, whatever the return value is supposed to be. And so they do talk about that in the blog post, but that is not very portable, like being able to put that everywhere in your React components, because it just sort of messes with your mind a little bit. It's not super readable. So they actually created a utility function, and the utility function is called Exhaustive Switch, and it's built in TypeScript, and it's pretty complex. Like if you take a look at it, it's using a lot of advanced patterns. It's using mapped types, obviously discriminated unions, generics. So you can take a look at how they built it. Now, one thing that they do say is that if regular switch statements work for you or your team, our recommendation is to use that. Simpler is better. If you have more complex discriminated unions you need to match against, especially nested ones, use a fully featured library like TS Pattern. That might be a better fit. But if you want to check out their little utility, you can. So I thought that was a pretty nice blog post because it does go into a lot of detail for like, what are the problems with, doing the different approaches, and how do we do this in a type safe way?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm looking at this type, and I think I could use this in lit too, I think. So I mean, it's just vanilla TypeScript.
Yeah, it is. So it's designed for like a JSX type of output, like language. So if you're doing React or Preact or whatever else is using JSX, this could be easier to do for conditional rendering.
Yeah, this is super cool.
Okay. This is more of a discussion, and it popped up in the TypeScript subreddit. But I was like, should we talk about this? Because then we started talking about it, and I was like, yeah, let's just add it to the episode. So let me just go to the OP. Okay. OP says, hello, I've been working on a browser-based MMORPG. Cool. A WebSocket and packets. Packets must be a framework or something like that. For a few months now, and I'm soon reaching the stage where I need to protect my sprite assets and code as much as possible. Do you have any direction you could point me toward? I understand that nothing ever will be 100% secure. Okay, so the top comment is anything that goes to the browser is not protectable. They have it on their local browser. You sent it to them. But I do think there was some nuance that we started talking about. And do you want to, because you're the game developer, but this also just applies to any kind of like production code. Like I want to protect the code that I'm putting in production. I don't want people to copy it. Or maybe I'm shipping assets in my game that I have a license for that I don't want someone to just copy and use. I mean, then they would be violating the license, but do they care? Like, what's to stop them from doing that?
Right. Yeah. And I think the best you can do is slow someone down either with obfuscation, right? Like there's plenty of, high powered code obfuscation tools for JavaScript that are out there. But again, at the end of the day, it does need to be unwrapped so that the browser can interpret it. Mm-hmm. And all of that is happening on the client. So a sufficiently interested party can retrieve your code.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
And actually, that's the same thing is true for desktop software as well. Like if you're shipping a game to a user, all of that music and video is in that game. Like it's just not as easy as the browser developer tools to crack it open. But you can still get at all of those image assets and audio. They're still breaking the license. So I think
people do.
Your only recourse is either A, being litigious and defending your intellectual property, which is usually good enough for people that are engaging in commerce, or don't ship it to them. So run your logic, run your, secret sauce, as it were, on the server. So it's a thing that is not given to clients. Yep. I think those are the only options you've got.
Yep, pretty much. And so you can go down the rabbit hole for obfuscation. So one of the suggestions from someone was if you do write it in WASM, WebAssembly, that is harder to get at the original source code, but definitely not impossible to reverse engineer. Another thing that you can do is simply make sure you don't ship source maps, like if you're worried about that. Now, personally, this is my opinion, for full stack developers, like just doing a regular front end app or whatever, ship your dang source maps because it's going to make it way easier to debug and catch issues in production. And that, to me, just outweighs anything. Like, I don't care if people are copying my front end code, don't care. But like, if you have a game, I can understand, like, you might have some special stuff that you do in there. But again, if it's running on the client, people are going to have access to it. Someone can copy it if they really want to. So you really have to run anything important or secret on the server so that it never gets shipped to the browser. So there was some other things too about sprite assets, like, don't send the originals. Like, that's kind of an easy one. Like, if you have a tile map that you bought royalty free, don't just put the royalty free image as one of your assets. You can transform it. You can compress it. You could add a watermark. You could do a digital watermark with like metadata. You could roll it into like an asset file that you encrypt and then decrypt. But again, the client will still have that decryption. But it does make it a little bit harder for someone to just sort of copy and paste or open in a new tab or whatever to copy stuff. But yeah.
And like, there's other techniques here, like that, again, just boil down to obfuscation. Like, you can do some fancy bit twiddling to pack and unpack your image resources. So like the raws that are sent down that they see in the browser tools are garbled. And then there's some client-side JavaScript that unpacks them into something usable for the browser. But again, a sufficiently determined person will be able to intercept that.
Yep. Just like you can download a YouTube downloader. Just go to a website and paste in your video and you'll get an MP4 file. It's like, you can't really do that easily in the dev tools, but all the code is there, so people have reverse engineered it, and you can just download YouTube videos offline. Cool. What other cool stuff do you got? You got some cool links?
Yeah, I have a couple cool links, and I'm going to lead with the thing that just hit the presses on the Excalibur Discord. Someone just announced their Steam game built in Excalibur. It's called Now That's a Big Dragon. It's a clicker game. It looks really fun. They've been a very active community member doing some really cool stuff. I think I featured them in a few other like cool things videos for Excalibur in the past. But Dark Shines is releasing their game sometime soon. It's written in Excalibur. It's on Steam. Go wishlist it.
Nice.
It looks really cool.
That's one of our first like commercial public games.
Yeah, it is the third Steam game that I know of, and this is the only one that's public.
Nice.
So it's awesome. It's the third one I know of that isn't mine. So I guess there's four that I know of, but it's the third that I know of that isn't mine that is also public that I could talk about.
Nice.
So I'm very excited to talk about it.
That's sweet.
It's very cool. Another cool link I have is one of our maintainers wrote a blog post on doing auto tiling using the dual tile map technique, which is a really cool way of just being able to just draw a map to a screen. So like, if you ever use tiled or anything like that and you're wondering like, oh, how does that work? Go check out the blog post on excaliburjs.com/blog.
Cool.
Justin's done a great job writing that up. And then the last thing I have is, if you were interested in like performance, and that's kind of been a common thread of this whole episode, is someone called out in the Michigan TypeScript Discord. Shout out, they're awesome. You should join them. They called out using immediately invoked function expressions for scratch variables to avoid allocation, which is something I talked about in my NDC Oslo talk, which is a way of like, oh, you pre-allocate a thing. And the way I was doing it was I was just putting scratch variables in a class as like a private field. Looks kind of gross and it's kind of messy. What's neat about IIFEs is you can close over those things so that only the function body has access to the scratch variable. Not like the way I was doing it, where technically all the innards can access each other. This is a really kind of clean way of doing that. And it's a trick I didn't realize, and it's super cool. So I'll link to the code there of how they did it. Justin Walsh had a lot of really cool examples. So definitely go give him a follow.
Nice. That's cool. Do you have an example of where I might use a scratch variable?
Totally. So this is all in the name of avoiding allocations. So for example, like you were doing like math operations and you need to like, multiply multiple arrays together. You don't want to build new arrays in memory. You just want to have one array, your kind of working space, and you just slot in the numbers that you need, do your operation, and never allocate a new object. You just hold on to that. It's basically taking your lumps up front. You've pre-allocated something that you'll never deallocate. But when you're using this, it's usually a hot path item. So it's like a thing that's in your hot loop. And you don't want to be allocating a lot in your hot loop because GC is really hurt. So if you can avoid allocating in a hot loop, you're better off.
Nice. You should make that a t-shirt.
I should make that a t-shirt. All right, writing that down. Don't allocate in a hot loop.
Sounds good. I've got one cool link because I've been offline for like the past week, but I did see something cool. This is a visualization or like a rendering of 1,000,000 blades of grass using the Love2D VR framework called LOVR, and it's written in TypeScript. I don't think that they provided the source code, but you can see the result, and it looks pretty neat. Make it full screen, and you can sort of like, move side to side as you watch the blades of grass moving. So it's interesting that I guess that it's written in TypeScript because Love2D is in Lua, isn't it?
That's right, it is. But did you know that Lua and TypeScript, or Lua and JavaScript really, their semantics are very similar. So you can kind of do a lot.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm interested in how they wrote this, because they didn't really expand on how they did it. They just posted it. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'll definitely reach out to them. But I do know of a project called the TypeScript to Lua project, which allows you to compile TypeScript to Lua code. And it turns out that Lua tables, function a lot like JavaScript, like prototype.
That's cool
stuff. So
cool.
Very, very similar semantics. There's a few edge cases where things aren't the same, but for the most part, you can get away with it. And that project I know is very popular in like a lot of the modding community. That's like, I don't, want to write Lua for my mod, but all of my games use Lua as the modding language.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather write TypeScript and then run it through the TypeScript to Lua compiler. And then
nice.
Go to town.
Maybe that's how they did it then. Yeah.
It might be. I don't know for sure, but
cool. All right. Pretty neat.
Yeah.
Do you have some takeaways for the episode?
Yeah.
What you thinking?
I'm thinking that August has been the month of performance.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of people angling at performance. And I think
it seems like every news episode in the news section, we're talking about performance for something.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people are competing for is linters.
Yeah, there's a lot of linting news lately.
I think the linter space is ready for disruption. Like, based on how many people are, hungry hippo in marbles towards linters. I don't know if that's a good metaphor.
Well, it's the next big tool, right? So I feel we haven't really gotten to this yet, but I feel like after linters, maybe testing is going to be next.
Mm-hmm.
Or, there have been efforts to speed up testing, but I bet there's a lot of low-hanging fruit with test runners that could probably be sped up. Because if you think about, like, all the stuff to speed up your CI pipeline, what do you got? You got your TypeScript build. Okay, that's going to be solved probably with TypeScript Go. Then you've got your linting. And then you're like, okay, I don't have many options here. But now you're starting to get a lot more options.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that will get totally sped up. But then what do you have? Tests. My tests take 20 minutes to run. And I'm running in .NET. Now, it's not because .NET is slow. It's because I'm using an actual in-memory database for my tests. So
are you doing Cypress at all too?
I'm not running Cypress and CI. I do run it locally. I don't have the CI. I don't have the web server setup infrastructure to be able to just run in a GitHub Action Runner. Because remember, my stuff runs on Windows, so I can't.
Womp womp.
I can't just start up like a Windows container or whatever.
Yeah, you're living the hard life right now.
I know. Don't. It's a sore spot for me. Don't talk about it.
Sensitive.
I need to migrate to Linux. That is part of my like 5-year plan. But anyway, what was I saying? Test runners, like the test step. I don't know. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that seems silly because most tests are slow because of userland code, don't you think?
Well, I think it depends. I think there's, well, okay, backing up, there's the testing pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people get the testing pyramid inverted, and I feel like that's, and what do I mean by that? And that slows things down. That's when you have too many end-to-end tests or whatever you call them, integration tests,
UI tests. Yep.
UI tests. You have too many of those and too few unit. But there is a place for those end-to-end tests. Like, here's the number that I give people. 3. 3 end-to-end tests.
Yeah.
Pick 3. Like, honestly, though, and if you have 3 well-designed end-to-end tests, and you can have like a regression suite that you maybe run out of band, but don't run it in CI. You don't need to run the regression suite in CI. Have 3 that do the happy path, and if you do that and you have feature toggles, you can just ship code all day long like I do. Like I literally deployed to prod yesterday, like 3 times.
Yep.
During the day while students are taking tests. Like,
yeah,
no problems.
I don't ship that often for my app, but when I do, it's just to git merge, and I basically don't worry about it. In fact, I've never had a rollback. Probably, I don't think I've ever had a rollback. It's just, and I use feature toggles and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, super simple because my test suite, it just like covers everything. So I know like if it passes, we're good to go.
Yeah. And I think a good resource, if you're, okay, we're going to go into the Minnesota long goodbye. But if you want to read up on getting stuff done and deploying to production, definitely check out Charity Majors. She's a leader at Honeycomb, which 10,000% agree with like basically everything she says. And that Honeycomb is, you don't have to go use their tool. I don't, but it's a great tool. And I know a lot of the engineers there, and they're fantastic people. Basically, you can get a lot done if you have observability in prod. So you know immediately when things are going well or when they're not. You have feature flags where you can just merge broken code. Like I tell people, I don't care if it's broken. Just as long as it's behind a toggle, and users won't see it if it's toggled off.
Yep.
And then if you have end-to-end tests, like 3 of them, don't have 400 million, because then it'll take you an hour to run that CI build. Have 3. You know if your app boots, and you'll know if your happy path works. So if you have all of those 3 things in conjunction running, you'll know, like, A, you'll have alerting if anything does go wrong. Which for me, like literally, I deploy to prod multiple times a day because every merge goes straight to prod. We're trunk-based development. Our mainline is prod. So that's how we work. And if you have a bigger feature, you just merge it in chunks behind a feature flag.
Yes.
You just merge small bits.
That's what I've been doing with this playthrough tracking. It's behind a feature flag. I could have planned it better because right now it is a pretty big PR because it requires a database migration.
Yeah.
And it's not backwards compatible. With some effort, I could make it go back and forth. But that's the problem, is that it needs a totally different data architecture.
Yeah. Things get trickier when you have a transactional store.
Yeah. So that's why it's a really big PR. But otherwise, I mostly stick to like I ship updates to stuff behind feature flags.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, if I were to tie this up in a bow, you want everything to be moving fast so that you can work fast. Like, you want your CI to be fast so that you can stay in context with what you're working on. So if something fails, it fails fast, and you can roll it back fast, or you can roll forward fast.
Yeah, actually, Target had a policy where we basically never did rollbacks. We always did roll forwards. So, I mean, we had a hotfix quick path. So if you had a hotfix PR, it could go out pretty much immediately with some limited testing. But like, we basically never did rollbacks. It was always roll forward. So I kind of take that philosophy into my own, my app. That's why I never do rollbacks, basically. I always just fix it or do a roll forward or something.
Yeah. And, if you're using feature toggles, you can turn it off. And you know what? That's real fast. I think if I were going to tie this up in a bow again, I'd say do science to make things run fast and be safe.
Sounds good. Well, you probably need to get to sleep.
Yeah, no, we're past my bedtime.
Good night, Eric.
Night, sweet prince.
All right. See ya.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.